Hey, housewives, come on in. You know the dirty dishes are still in the sink from yesterday and the laundry is still in the basket. Pop your AirPods in and make yourself at home here.
I'm Tracy.
I'm Tori.
And we are your Unlikely Housewives. Stepping out in faith and believing that God calls the unlikely, we are here to show you the appreciation and validation you deserve, lead you to authentic relationships, and release you of believing the cultural lies to restore your faith and wellness.
Pull up those high-waisted yoga pants, tighten your top knot, and reheat your coffee for the third time. Turn up the volume, and let's go. Hey, housewives.
Hey, welcome back, housewives.
We are so excited for another incredible guest. God just keeps lining them up for us, and man, are we lucky, or hashtag blessed. But we are, and I'm gonna blame Tracy. Is that the right word? Blame Tracy?
I'm not sure. That's a positive.
Because these are so timely for the season that you're in.
Yeah.
So I am going to let Tracy introduce you, and I'm pretty sure you'll figure out why here in a second.
And I love how it's so timely for Tracy. Honey, it's coming for you too.
No, I know. Tracy is a little bit of ahead of me, and she will answer all my questions because I will remember none of this.
Yes. Well, we can always listen back to the podcast. So, all right, we want to introduce Jeanine Mouchawar with us today. Did I do that right?
You got it.
Okay, perfect. Jeanine is a parenting coach who helps moms and dads be their teenagers' go-to person. Her parenting mastery program teaches new strategies to stop battles and create a calm, peaceful home so their children can thrive. Her approach allows parents to stop feeling at a loss and start knowing what to do to feel close again. Parents reduce their frustration and worries and help their children be the best version of themselves. Jeanine earned her BA from Stanford University and is a certified professional life coach. She's married and has 3 adult children. Welcome to the Unlikely Housewives.
Thanks for having me, Tracy and Tori. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today.
Yes, we're so thankful. I would say I remember when we reached out, I read your whole bio and what you do, and just I remember just saying, "Can you sign me up? Can you please come talk to us?" I am 100% in the season of just seeking just more encouragement. And I think a lot of parents are right now, especially teen parents. You know, it is really a joyous season to be in this phase of you're still a kid, but you're kind of an adult and we get to hang out and it's really cool. But I still have to teach you things and I kind of feel lost because it's not the same as when you were 4, 8, even 12.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that is the real challenge, right? It's like all of a sudden, for a lot of us, parenting went from all the snuggles and the mommy I love yous and, and the kisses to you're thinking, what happened to my sweet kid and who am I living with? Mm-hmm. It feels hard because it is hard because they're in a transition. And so it really impacts our life and our relationship with them.
Yeah. Well, tell our listeners a little bit about you and your kiddos and just kind of how you got to become a parent coach.
Yeah, thanks. So I have 3 children who are now young adults. And, just kind of like I just touched on in the early years, there were, of course, challenges. I think parenting always has a set of challenges. But I felt like with the knowledge and the resources that I had, that I could navigate it pretty effectively. Like I felt, I kind of got this. And of course, there were times when you doubt yourself or you say something you wish you hadn't said. But overall, I was feeling okay about things and really enjoying that love and connection. When my kids hit the teenage years, things just really started to change, which I know you're going through it right now, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And, I think as they started making more choices by themselves and not necessarily listening to my fabulous guidance anymore, I started to get more worried and more scared. And when that happened, I would kind of tighten the reins. right? And try to really stop or fix or change what was going on. And what I noticed is with two of my kids who were a little more agreeable, a little more people pleaser-ish, they might do what I was saying, but I was noticing two things. Like one, it wasn't really effectively helping them solve their issues for the long run. It was sort of these short-term gaps. And for my one who really struggled with ADD and a learning disability, whenever I tried to stop or fix or tell him what to do or anything like that, it caused a further disconnection and rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got to the point where I thought, this is not what I want. I had these kids for a reason. I want this close relationship with them, not just now, but for all the years to come. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, what I'm doing isn't working. So I went actually with my son, the middle one, who we were having the biggest problems. We went to a program together that was based in dialectical behavioral therapy. Long story short, it taught us a new way to talk to each other, the language we used, the way we communicated. And all of a sudden, like his grades started pulling up. He started being more respectful. We started laughing more and connecting more. And I was just like, wow, this learning, these tools, these strategies are so much more important than the quantitative econ classes I took in college. Those do not apply when you're parenting a teenager. And I just thought, I got to get this information into as many hands of parents as possible. And so I went and realized, wow, life coaching is actually the perfect modality to do this. And the principles of life coaching are very aligned with what the program was teaching. And so just work together so beautifully. And then now I have my business where I coach moms, I coach dads one-on-one to help them like know what to say, what to do with these teenagers and really create that connection and closeness that they want.
I have a question then. My first question, because I'm trying to think as you're talking. I'm like, well, first of all, yes to all of it, but also like practicality, like for our listeners. One of the things, and I'm sure you can go back and relate to this too, the conversation that we're always having with teenagers is priorities, right? Like the grades, the sport, the time. Like we've hit that phase where you're not a kid anymore where mom says, okay, you need to be here at this time. You need to be here at this time. You have to have this. But you're also like, you still need support because it's overwhelming for their undeveloped brains, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you communicate with the teenager besides saying you got to get your priorities in check? You know, we have our what feels like a weekly meeting right now to be like, okay, what do you have this week? You know, so what kind of practical tips would you have for parents with that conversation?
Yeah. I love that question. You know, first, I think we got to kind of look at why our approach isn't working. So we're motivated to try something different.
Yeah.
So I want you and your listeners to think about like when you start conversations with what I love to call the to-do list, the checklist, right? Like you're talking about basically the priority list is what you call it. Mm-hmm. And, we know as moms, like all these things need to get done. And so when they're not getting done, we get scared. And so we go in and that's what we make the conversation about, right? The priority list, the to-do list. And if you notice your language, if you're like I was, and most of my clients were having these conversations with little things that slide in, you should do this, or you need to do this, right? Are we giving our advice? And what happens for our teenagers, right? They're naturally at a phase where they want to be independent and they want to make decisions for themselves. So when you use that kind of language and approach, you tend to hear things like, you don't get it, you don't understand, right? Or you're just trying to talk about, hey, did you get that math assignment done? And all of a sudden there's this huge explosion and argument, right? Or if you have a child who's maybe not that emotional or fiery like that. Like I had one of each. You might have one that kind of rolls their eyes. And then you might have one that just kind of goes to their room and slams the door because they just don't know what to do and they can't be receptive and respond to what you're saying, right? They get defensive.
Yeah.
They might feel ashamed. And so if we can kind of notice that, wow, when we focus the conversation on stopping or fixing the behavior with the shoulds, the needs, the advice, it really causes them to disconnect from the conversation and in some way shut the conversation down. So does that resonate? Because that's what I see.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I'm not even in the teen. I'm in the preteens,
Yes.
and that resonates.
Oh, I'm sure it starts at the preteen age for sure, Tori.
Yeah.
That's when we start seeing kind of them oscillate back and forth between the way things were in our relationship and then the way things are heading.
Mhm.
So perfect time for you, Tori, to start practicing some of these things when you feel them not engaging in a conversation with you the way you want them to.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that it 9 to 13, it was really from a parenting standpoint of like your first and second child, like that was the hardest in parenting for me because it was that like figuring out the language. And still, I don't got it. I'm not doing all right. I mean, I am sometimes, but there's some of that, like you just said, that there's no intention in my shoulds, woulds, coulds. It's just what I know. Right. So it's lack of different ideas to try, but it's also like just kind of what we tried to work through in that 9 to 13 and what worked and what didn't fell to the wayside. Right. And every child is different. So you kind of restart that program over with each child coming up.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. And just to recognize that, listen, when my kid was younger, they were more agreeable and they needed a heavier hand.
Mm-hmm.
They needed more of that control that really, where we are telling them what they should do or need to do. We need to don't touch the stove or you'll burn your, hand. Look 2 ways before you cross the street so a car doesn't hit you. And so what happens is it becomes our habitual language without even realizing it, because let's be honest, it worked. Yeah. And that's what they needed at that point. But now that they're teenagers or preteens, they start to need something different. And so the solution here is like, we got to slow ourselves down. And before we jump to a conversation focused on stopping or fixing or changing what they're doing, the plummeting grades, the disrespect, the lying, whatever it is, we have to build connection first. We have to slow down the conversation so they feel invited in, not defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to really start taking an interest and be curious about what's going through their mind that's causing them to make those choices that are freaking us out. Right. So that's what I teach. I've got a framework where we focus on getting them talking, showing them that you understand, that you've got to start there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can start the conversation around, hey, what do you want to do differently when they're not making the best of choices? But even that piece of the conversation is really starting with asking them for their ideas and resisting that urge to give our ideas.
Yeah.
So what are some conversation starters that would work, you think, or that you would recommend just off the bat for our listeners to just start using some verbiage or when there's a moment of silence in the car, we can just ask that question. When we don't need anything else from them, we can just practice asking that one question and just, get that to where our kids are like, where the hell did that come from? Well, you know what I mean? They're like, wait, mom's doing something weird. Mom's listened to somebody.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, let's definitely talk about some conversation starters that might be different than what you're doing now. I just want to add the caveat of if inside of us we're really scared or worried about something or angry about something, and we ask these questions, they still don't land right. Right? You still might not get the response you want. So honestly, I really believe the hardest part when you're parenting teenagers is slowing yourself down and just kind of managing your own emotions before you enter a conversation. And it sounds simple, but it ain't easy.
No, no.
So,
I can barely handle my own emotion when it's just me and myself talking.
yeah. So, right, I really want to urge your listeners, don't skip this step, because you can ask a question like, what are you doing? Right. And you're annoyed, you're frustrated, you're angry, or you can ask the question as, hey, what's going on? What happened?
Yeah.
So you can ask the question, but if you're feeling inside angry or agitated or irritated, it comes out in your question, right? That energy out inside of you. And so I just wanted to put that there so everyone's kind of mindful. Wait, I tried those questions and it's not working.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I do understand that. I mean, I know there's many times where you try to have the conversation and you do start that way with the intent in mind already that this is the conversation I want to have. Like, I think that's kind of where we are. Like, both my husband and I, like, we talk, and I've shared this with you before, but like, we have this conversation where we're like, okay, this is what's going on. We really need to talk about this. And then, like, my husband would come to me like, I started. It worked out well for about 5 minutes, but then it didn't lecture. Dang it. Like, we'll try. We're making effort.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that, right? Your intention's in such a good place, Tracy, and you're being so thoughtful, like ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's really what it takes. Right? You really need to do that. I'd say where I'm noticing what you shared and what I see a lot of my clients where that goes and veers in the direction you didn't want is when we are really focused on our agenda and what we want to talk about in the conversation. And so one thing you can do just to prolong the calmness and the juicy part of the conversation is just to try to quiet the intention in the back of your mind and start with like curiosity about it. Right. So let's say you go on the student portal and you see like they're missing a few assignments. Right. So you're going into this conversation with the attention, oh my God, I want to know what's going on because I bet they're on their phone all the time and they're, watching videos and they're posting selfies or whatever they're doing. Right. Our mind tends to go that way and make these assumptions about why the homework assignments are missing. And so if you can just start instead from a place of, I'm going to quiet all those assumptions and I'm going to lean in and really try to understand what's going on there that they are missing the assignments, because what I know to be true and what I want everyone to remind themselves of is most kids don't want to fail, right? They're not intentionally saying, oh, I'm going to blow off these assignments because I'm super excited to get a D in this class. But that just doesn't happen. Right. So what's happening in reality is we're focused on the missing assignments. But what we want to do is ask these curious what questions to understand the root cause of what's really going on. Right. Because let's say they're missing assignments and all of a sudden our conversation has turned into a conversation about putting limits on tech. Meanwhile, maybe they're missing assignments because they are embarrassed because they asked a question in class and their friends made fun of them. And so now they're not seeking the help they need because they don't want to feel embarrassed or humiliated. And they think, you know what, it'll almost just be easier if I just don't do the assignments. Right. So that's what we want to, when Tori, when you ask, what are some great questions to ask? It's like, I almost think, put your Sherlock Holmes hat on, be like, I'm going to be a detective here. I'm going to really try to figure out what's happening inside my kid. What are they thinking? What are they feeling that's causing them to make the choice to not turn in assignments or be rude or disrespectful or lie to me? And when you make the conversation about that and clear some of that out, it allows them to make better choices moving forward, which is the end result of what you're talking about that you and your husband want.
Yeah.
Okay, the thought I'm having is like when I was a teenager and like I'm a procrastinator. I would wait until the last day to write my paper. I'd stay up all night. That was just, I may or may not still do that. I don't have to write papers anymore, but I have to set up podcast studios. But when I don't know that I was intentionally doing, or I don't know if that's a behavior that you can change in someone, or if asking, because again, some people work better under pressure. Right. 100%. And some people need to wait until, that is the way that they handle it. And that's not something that if my kid has to create that intentional pressure, I had to create that intentional pressure to do what I think my best was, then, how as parents do we be okay with that? Because we're like, no, your book report, you have 4 weeks to do it. Start it now. I'm not going to help you read the last week of this, and try to cram it all in 4 days. So like, how as a parent do you cope with that and realize, okay, I did this too. It's okay. I turned out fine.
Or did you?
Yeah. I'm kidding. Questions. I don't know.
Well, I'm so glad you brought it up. I have one of my 3 kids is exactly like what you were describing. She does her best work at the last second. And, just to recognize that our kids are different and they have different needs. And I remember thinking, because I don't work that way, I remember looking at her and thinking, what's wrong with you? Start in the beginning. You need time to do all these drafts and you're avoiding getting your work done and that's going to backfire. And right, I had all those thoughts because that's not how I work. You're going to have an advantage if one of your kids are that way because that can work. And so I think it's really in those types of situations. Most of us have a child that's not exactly like us, at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And just telling yourself, you know what, there's not one right way to do things. Just like there's not one right way to parent. There's no perfect parent, right? Mm-hmm. And for our kids, like there's not one right way to get that paper done.
Mm-hmm.
And really what it's about in that situation is managing our own fears and worries that they're not going to get it done and it's not going to be done well. Now, that's saying that as long as you see that method working for your child, like that method did work for my daughter. She got straight A's, but it would give me a heart attack watching how she procrastinate.
Yeah.
So, that's like kind of back to where we started before is we got to manage our own worries and fears and emotions when we see our kids solving for things or leading their life a certain way that may not be the way we do it, and realize as long as the outcome is working for our child, right, then it's my job really to manage my fear around the procrastination.
That's really good. You said something at the beginning, and I want to tie it into this because you said it's about the relationship that you want to have with your child that leads you to even wanting to have, consider a parenting coach and to go through the process and the formula to improve so that you have that relationship. Knowing my husband and I, like where we are, like that is what we want. I would say that we only know our own experiences, right? Like his with his parents, mine with my parents, and then transitioning into, and one, he was also in a family of 2 kids. I was one of 2, and we have 4 kids. Like the dynamics are just different. So we're taking what we've learned, trying to apply it to our family, but also feeling just super spread thin. That's just the season that we're in. The intentionality is there because we want that relationship, just like you said in the beginning. So granted, I'm familiar because I've already talked to you. I know your services. For our listeners, if they're going, how do I know that that's what I need? What would you say to the parents and the listeners going, here's, again, it's not the same formula for everybody. I get it. But if you're feeling this, this is what you can provide, because we all want a good relationship with our kids. I just think that some of us don't have the strength to say, I need help as an adult. So as an adult saying, I need help and needing you, how do we get to that space? Right?
Yeah, it is hard to ask for help. I remember, I tried everything. I was going to speakers, I was listening to podcasts, I was reading books, and it just felt like I kept coming back to, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do to effectively help my kids the way I want to, and to really have that close connection that I want, where like I was their go-to person. I wanted to be that person. I took my job as a mom really seriously.
Yeah.
And, just like you two, just very dedicated to that. So, I think it's recognizing that, I experienced this, like with 2 of my kids, the relationship was good, but I wanted it to be great, and then my relationship with my son had a lot of challenges, arguing, yelling, lying, blaming, not taking responsibility, and whatever I was doing wasn't working. And that just felt awful. I'd be up at night, I'd wake up in the middle of the night in like a cold sweat and replaying the conversation that I'd had with him. It didn't go the way I wanted, and I wanted to do better. But to your point, we only know based on what our experiences were. So if we had a good childhood, like I had a pretty good childhood, we repeat the same parenting approaches that our parents did. If we had a really terrible one, we tend to do the exact opposite. But the commonality thread there is, if you've never been exposed to different ways to communicate with your child than what you saw growing up, like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think to me, like I have clients who've come to me, like I have a client whose, 9th grade daughter, there wasn't any big, huge problem, but like she wasn't sharing with her mom, and she was noticing she was sharing with her girlfriend's mother, right? And it seemed like whenever she tried to open up conversation, she kind of got shut down. And so there wasn't, her daughter was doing great in school and had a huge group of friends and all of that, but she didn't have that closeness and connection that she was really looking for. And so we worked together to change that, and then I have other clients who's maybe your child, is really doing risky behavior. And I think with most of our kids doing risky behavior, we kind of toggle between anger because we're so scared and intense worry. And if you're feeling those things, I guess I want your listeners to know, like, it doesn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. And when you decide, listen, I want to learn new things so I can really help my children effectively, the ones who are struggling, or take your relationship from, hey, this seems to be working, but not as well as I want it to. That's when a parent coach can really help you.
That's really good.
That is really
good. That answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know about you, but like I had never heard of a parenting coach. So
it's something too that I have more recently. And I do think it's funny because we talked about this the other day. The advice that we're getting is someone who's gone before us, right? You're not going to, I'm sure there's parenting coaches who are coaching while they're parenting. But like you're speaking from experience, what you've learned, and then education. So you can take all of that and encourage someone. And I think that is, I think that's great. And one of the things I was going to ask you, you had said there's like a formula. Obviously, you don't have to go through your formula here, but knowing that, is there one more piece that you can give our listeners advice on? Obviously, trying to remove that intention before and, creating good conversation. The one thing that we struggle with, we've already kind of talked about it, is just the lecturing. We got to work on that.
Yeah.
Is there one more piece of advice that you can share with our listeners?
Oh, yeah. There's so many pieces of it. But I think one of the things that is so effective where you'll stop hearing from your child, you don't understand, you don't get it, is when you're actively listening to what they're saying and you're listening for how they're feeling. And then you validate those feelings. And what I know to be true is with my clients, like it's really scary in the beginning because it's going to feel like you're being permissive and you're saying, oh yeah, that's no problem. You have the missing assignments. But that's not what I'm talking about. We're not validating the situation. I want you to validate how they're feeling because we all have feelings. Feelings aren't right and wrong. They just are. So to say something like, hey, I understand that you're feeling, it makes sense. You're feeling a little humiliated because your friend made fun of you in class, right? Or, hey, I get it. You're really angry at your brother because he hit you and you wanted to hit back, right? You're not saying, hey, no problem, you smacked your brother. Our thing is, I understand that situation made you angry and that makes sense that you're angry or you're upset or you're worried or you're hurt or you're scared. Like those feelings make sense to me as your parent and there's nothing wrong with you, right? Anyone in your situation would feel that way.
Mm.
That really helps your kid feel like you see them, you hear them, you understand them. And that's what opens up the channel to give your awesome guidance.
Yes, gotta get there because we know so much.
I know so much. Your amazing wisdom. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I'll add one other thing because Tori, I know you asked about, hey, let's give them some questions like that work, So instead of giving specific questions, two things. One, I have a free guide that we can make available to your listeners that has 5 questions in there that honestly, they work so well. They open up conversation. They'll help you take that tone and judgment maybe out of your voice, and they'll help you get to a more calm, grounded leader place. But what I will say is one of the things is like a hot tip that you can start today is stop asking why questions and start your sentence with what. So if you just do that, there's a shift because most of the time as parents, when we're asking why, it tends to put our kids on the defense. Right? Why'd you do that? Why'd you talk to me that way? Right? Why didn't you do your homework? And it immediately creates that argument, right? Or the eye roll or the disconnection, the door slam, all those signs that we get. And if you just say to yourself, wait, how can I make this a what question? That's going to start movement right there. And even if you don't know how to change your why question, like just keep it vague. What happened? Hey, I noticed you're missing assignments. What happened? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't take all the content of what you really want to talk about out of your language and keep it super big, because what we're trying to do by these curious what questions is engage in our conversation so we can figure out what the real problem is, which is we talk talked about before, the real problem is what's going on in their mind and what sort of feelings is that creating inside of them to cause the behavior we're seeing. And so we want to try to flush that out of them just by, like you were saying, Tracy, just what's going on? What happened?
Well, it's almost, just I've been in therapy, so I've had the experience. It's almost just getting them to vocalize their own problem and then come up with their own solution. Like we're flipping the training, the parenting to parent yourself. So we have to ask the questions to help them get to their answer, because if they come up with it and it's their idea, we know that's going to go better.
100%. Right. That's exactly right. That's right, Tori.
Said that also works with husbands. Sorry.
Honestly, full transparency, so many of my clients are like, wait, I tried talking this way to my husband and it's so much better.
We've released it.
There's a joke in there that, like my husband's is the other kid that I, have to, so, but anyways.
100%.
But
I also think one other thing, Tori, just to answer your question, that things that aren't in the guide, because the guide has 5 questions, but one thing I love, and just to get your listeners' mind thinking about, and in addition to the guide, is think about how can I ask my kid a question when they walk in the door from school that really throws them for a loop? Something I wouldn't ask, right? Because normally we're like, how's your day? How'd the test go? What did you do? Who did you have lunch with? Right. And instead, ask something that a mom wouldn't normally ask. So, what was the worst part about your day? Right. Or what don't you like about that? Right. The kid comes in, I hate my, calculus teacher. She's so awful. Say, well, what is the worst part about her? Versus, I think what we tend to do as parents is she's not that bad and she's trying to teach you and that's just her and you need to learn how to deal with her, right? Instead, lean in and get them to start articulating it and get it out of their system, right? And then it's a way to connect with them. It doesn't mean you're telling them that that's okay, that, the teacher's behavior or not doing something that they were supposed to do. But it's like finding a different way in to engage them in a conversation with you. So you really can get to the connection point and flushing out what's really going on inside of them. So you can get to that last step, right? Getting them to cooperate, which Tracy was talking about, where you really like, well, what's your idea of what to do differently?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Versus telling them.
That's really great. I know that years ago, I heard a parent say, my greatest achievement will be when my kids grow up, have their own families, and want to come back home.
100%.
And that's, I want my children to want to hang out with me. Like I want them, and as I want them to, when they have families of their own, hey, let's go see my parents, or, that's the kind of connections we all long for. So I just want to say thank you so much, Jeanine, for your incredible advice in your, where can our listeners follow you, connect with you, website, social media handles? Where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Everything's located on my website if you want to start there. It's JanineMouchawar.com. And I'm on Instagram as Jeanine.theparentingcoach. I run a Facebook group that's super supportive if you're feeling like I want to be part of a community with other moms who are struggling with the same things. I'm on LinkedIn because that's fun to be on there too. Because working parents struggle as well.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I just started YouTube and just creating some videos. So I'm working on some short content, long content. There's a few videos already up there. One, I don't know if it's in your world, but Netflix's Adolescence, that's on TV right now. One of their number one shows. A couple of my clients, a lot of my community had watched it, were really scared. So I did a video about that and what I thought, really worked well in the show and what isn't so helpful. So I did a 10-minute video about that to help parents. I think I have one on there that I uploaded about boundaries, how to set and maintain boundaries, such a hot topic for all of us.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's another place if you prefer video versus reading things. So,
and we can put all the links in the show notes.
Absolutely.
And we'll get your free PDF or how to get it and put that in the show notes as well.
Yes. Well, just want to thank you so much for your time and leaning into this space when you experienced it yourself, and then you were like, oh my gosh, so many more people need this, and if I can do it, I will. So thank you for continuing to do that and offering that for others.
And we'll keep trying. And I know one of these times it's going to work. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, Jeanine, it worked.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It does work if you just, kind of change your approach a little bit and try some new language and communication. Start with that guide and see where that gets you. I bet you'll see some changes. I know you'll see some changes just from those questions. So, and thank you for saying that, Tori. It really is why I do what I do. It's very meaningful to me. It was really, really painful to especially go through parenting my child that was neurodivergent and to kind of come out the other end. And like you said in the beginning, if just one person hears this and it helps, one is enough. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
All right, housewives. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Whether we made you laugh or cry today, we pray you feel appreciated, bolder and braver than yesterday, stronger and more faithful for tomorrow, and living in who you were made to be today.
Join our online community on Facebook, link in the show notes, and be sure to review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy listening. Until next time, housewives, we give you permission to walk confidently, free, and to be intentional in your slippers or stilettos.